Hello, TM24 here, and we are back with some more Marvel Snap content. If you're just now finding the channel, welcome. If you're a returning viewer, thank you for your continued support. I appreciate it. Loki, the llama here, appreciates it as well, and I hope both new and returning viewers enjoy this video. So, today we're going to be talking about the state of Marvel Snap's meta. Now, what I've seen from playing this game and trying out these different decks there are a few different decks that seem to rise to the top, but then they have different variations depending on how the meta is playing that week. So what I'm going to do for y'all in this video is look at the 5 decks, give you a different variation of that deck, and just kind of talk about the deck in general and what it brings to the table. So we'll get started here. You can see the names of the first of the 5 decks, and then like I said, I'll give you another variation of each. So this first list here that we're going to be talking about, of course, is High Evolutionary. Now this is the High Evolutionary lockdown, lockout list, whatever you like to call it. I prefer this list over the other version. The other version, which is the Lockjaw version, seems to have a little bit more upside, but I like the way that this one plays, and therefore this is my preference. Now, I know that a couple of these cards in here might be a little bit different. I know most of these lists don't contain Dr. Doom, but personally, I think Dr. Doom is great, especially with a lot of, not abominations, but Spider-Men running around. I think having a way to reach that location can be huge. So in this list, the High Evolutionary base, of course, is High Evolutionary himself. And then we do have Cyclops, Hulk, Abomination, Thing, and Wasp. Now, I know a lot of people are also running Misty Knight as well, and they're going a little bit heavier on those 1-drops. I see that. I don't like to put that much into 1-drops because Killmonger can easily come through and just wipe out, a lot of your power. So the only 1-drops that I go with are Sunspot and Nebula. I love that Nebula forces your opponent to play there, while Sunspot works great in this deck because you don't mind just floating energy because it's going to power up your Sunspot, it's going to trigger your Cyclops, and it's going to buff up your Hulk. So I really like the way Sunspot and Nebula play in this list. Storm is another card that we have put here in this list because we've got 2 great 1-drops that will benefit from other cards not being able to play on that location. Additionally, we have 2 great follow-ups on turn 4. One in the form of Cyclops, which is then going to start hitting your opponent's power cards with negative power, and then the Thing, who essentially is a 4/9. So I really like the follow-up that Storm has in this deck. Now, coming to kind of the lockout part of it, we've got Professor X and Spider-Man. The idea is to get one of them down on 5 to secure yourself a lane, and then you've got a simple play with Hulk on turn 6. In some cases, maybe it's Dr. Doom if you need to take back that Storm lane, but that's the idea. 5, you're going to lock down something. 6, you just secure one of the other 2, maybe both, depending on how the game is playing out. So this is one version of the list. Now, High Evolutionary is one of those cards that is obviously built around, so I'm going to show you guys the other version as well right now, and we'll build it here kind of together. So Dr. Doom is going to stay, but we're going to get rid of most of these other cards, and we may end up adding them back, but I'm going to go with the list that I use. Like I said, I like Dr. Doom. I like this base of High Evolutionary, and now we need to start adding to it. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to 3-drops because obviously this is built around Lockjaw. So we're going to add Lockjaw, and there is another inclusion that is super common but super strong, and that's Thor. So we're going to add Thor as well. Now, I like having 3-3-drops because I want to play something on turn 3 if possible. I don't like a hand that gets you too heavy and then you can't play anything, so I like having 3 in here. I know a lot of the times Cyclops isn't included in this list, but my personal preference is to have him there. Now, next up, we need to look at those 4, 5, and 6s of those other cards. A great one here, of course, is going to be Jubilee, because we're going to have a lot of these higher cost cards, so Jubilee being able to cheat some of that out is going to be huge. is just going to be huge. So we like Jubilee in this list. Additionally, we do have a 5-drop here in the form of Jane Foster that I like to play as well. She's going to draw both Wasp and, if you are able to play Thor, Mjolnir as well. So perfect. We have a nice base going here, and then it's time to kind of just fill it out. Now, I know a lot of people are running Infinite. He's okay. What I don't like is that if you don't play him, or you end up drawing him, let's put it that way. Let's say you draw Infinite, chances are he's not coming down on the board. I like a card that I always have the option to play. So one of them for sure is going to be Magneto. Magneto is going to be great. And then the other one I feel is kind of an obvious inclusion, but it's Chavez. Now, I know this list is a little bit different from some of the other ones that people run. I know that, a lot of the times Odin is in here, Infinite's in here. They don't typically run Cyclops, but this is the high evolutionary lockdown list that I personally play when I do decide to go with the high evolutionary lockjaw. So those were the 2 high evolutionary lists that I'm seeing run the most in the meta right now. I think they're both incredibly strong. Like I said, I think this version has a little bit more upside, whereas the other version is a bit more controlled. I prefer playing control style games, so that's why I prefer the other version. But both of these are going to do great for you. But let's get on to the next one, and that is actually going to be these destroy decks. So this is the destroy deck that I prefer to play. Now, I know a lot of people are running some different cards in here, but we'll talk about what we've got going on here. So we've got 3 1-drops. Obviously, Nova makes a ton of sense. We want to buff up what we've got out here. Yondu is going to add to both our Death and Null. Well, reduce Death's cost, add to Null's power. And I like Squirrel Girl because it kind of sends our discounts into hyperdrive with Killmonger. We get Squirrel Girl down, then we can play Killmonger, and all of a sudden, Death's already 5, not including, if we've played anything else or if our opponents played a 1-drop. So that's why I like Squirrel Girl in this list. Additionally, it gives another target to something like Carnage and Venom. Even though you're not adding all that much, 1 power could be the difference. So those are the 1-drops. I do know a lot of people aren't running Squirrel Girl and they're instead going for Deadpool. I can totally see that. You're definitely going to ramp up your Null a little bit quicker. I just have a preference for Squirrel Girl in this list. Next up, we're looking at our 2-drops. We've got Bucky, Carnage, Wolverine. That's pretty standard in terms of destroy cards, destroy decks. Those are the 2-drops that are going to be run. Obviously, Bucky Barnes is giving you Winter Soldier, Carnage is eating things up, and you're trying to destroy Wolverine as many times as you can. Then we come to our 3-drops, and again, it's all very, very standard here. You've got Killmonger to, 1, destroy your 1-drops and also your opponents. You got Venom to kind of eat these all up, and Deathlock as another destroy option. Then we come to 4, and it's our 1 answer in the form of Shang-Chi. Now, I think Shang-Chi is great in this list, but sometimes can feel a bit awkward being at the 4 cost. Do you play him early on 4? Do you want to try and hold him till 6? That would probably be his other best time. But if you're trying to play Null, then you're not going to be able to play Shang-Chi. A lot of the times you can get Death cheap enough to play both Death and Shang-Chi. So I like Shang-Chi as an answer. Sometimes he can feel a little bit clunky to me at least. And then, of course, the two kind of big cards of the Death, the destroy package, and it's Null and Death, and they make perfect sense. Everything goes towards either discounting or buffing them up. So this list is great. I think it's very, very consistent. I think that it's fairly easy to win games, but a lot of the play, it just feels a little bit repetitive. It's definitely a little bit predictable. A lot of the times Null's coming down, Death's coming down on 6, so your opponent can hold things like their Shang-Chi, and if they can lock you out of a location or something like that, all of a sudden you become really easy to beat. But I do prefer this list over them because it seems to be the most consistent, and just it gets wins. I'm sorry there, but it definitely gets wins. So therefore, this is the one that I like running. I do know there's another one out there, and actually it doesn't run any 1-drops here. So it's going to run pretty much these standard cards. It doesn't run Wolverine. I'm just double checking it here as well. It doesn't run Deathlock or Shang-Chi. So the other cards in this list, it's going to play a bit more like an Electro list, but obviously if you can destroy Electro, that's going to be great. So first off, we got to find him, but we're also going to add Wave in there. So we've got Electro, we've got Wave, we've got Killmonger still, we're keeping Venom, we're definitely keeping Null and Death. Now, what are the other inclusions? One is going to come in the form of Shuri. Shuri is great, and she's going to be huge thanks in part to the next inclusion in Nimrod. 4 right into 5 feels perfect, and then we do have some nice 6-drops here, but we definitely need to add Zola, and then this list is also running Destroyer. So because we can get up to, if we play Electro on 3, we can play Nimrod on 4, Destroyer on 5, and then we could go something like a Null or Death on the next, on the next turn. But, I think Destroyer's a little bit tough because if you don't play him on 5, you're probably not playing him because obviously he's destroying the rest of your board. Unless you've set it up in a way where, Nimrod is powered up and you don't mind destroying those Nimrods to get more copies, Destroyer can kind of feel a little bit caught in your hands at times. But this list is nice because it has more options and it allows you to play the game a little bit different way. Like we talked about, let's say you don't hit Electro or Wave, you could still go Bucky on 2, Venom on 3, Shuri on 4, Nimrod 5, and then you can come through with Zola, which is a really, really nice play. 12 powers getting put at the other 2 lanes feels, at least one of the lanes, and then there'll be a total of 3 Nimrods. I guess that's the best way to say it once you use Zola. So that feels great. Additionally, you have those other options that Electro and Wave bring about. You can play a Wave and get your Null down early. You can make sure that you get a power card down like Death. Typically you're going to have discounts, but in this list you might not have those discounts. So I really like this list. I'm a big fan of Zola, so I'm glad that he's in this list. And I'm sorry, it's not 3, it's 4, because as you can see, it adds copies of it to the other locations. So you're actually going to get 4 copies of Nimrod, because when it's destroyed, it's adding a copy to each other location, plus another copy to each other location. So that's 4 Nimrods coming down, which can be absolutely huge. But this is a lot more fun list, I would say. The plays don't feel as linear. It feels like you have options, like you can kind of change what you're going to do on turn 3 and 4. Maybe you were thinking this and then it changes. It definitely seems to have a little bit more upside as well in terms of being able to pull off huge plays. But again, it doesn't feel as consistent. It doesn't feel as I don't know if stable is the word. I think consistent is probably just the best way to sum it up. The other list, you kind of know how much power you're going to get out. It's going to be pretty good. You just need to make sure you play it correctly. With this, because you're not sure if you're going to hit the right things, maybe you hit Nimrod, but then you end up with Null and Death in your hand, and you don't hit Destroyer or Zola. Sometimes it can feel a little bit tough. And maybe that's just it. It's the inconsistency, but that is obviously going to come because of the flexibility as well. So this is the other list. I do like this list in terms of upside, but I prefer the other list. Just if you're going to go grind ladder, you want that consistency. You want to be able to get your power out, get it down, and just really learn a deck, and that's a good one to do so. But this has been kind of the destroy decks. Next up, we have Bounce, and it's Kitty Bounce. And I think Kitty Bounce is probably one of the best decks actually in the game right now. The problem with it is that it's probably one of the toughest to play correctly, just because you want to get greedy. With a deck like this, you want to get really greedy with it, and you kind of got to stop yourself. Sometimes just playing Beast on top of a Kitty Pride, which already has an Iceman down, is more than enough. But we all want to hit you know, Kitty Pryde, Hit Monkey, and Iceman with Beast or something like that. So you're always trying to go a little bit more, and it can definitely hurt you. But I mean, looking at this list, we've got 5 1-drops. Now I know that's a little bit heavy, and I know that there are some other lists running a few different cards, but I like these 5 in particular. One, because Spider-Ham, he's gonna help essentially answer a big threat. We've got Boss that is going to, you know, buff everything up. We've got Iceman, who is, again, a disruption for our opponent. Obviously, Kitty Pryde is going to be in here because of how powerful she can be. And then the Hood's demons are amazing, especially because we can get rid of the Hood when we need to, thanks to Falcon and Beast. So I really like the 1-drops here. Now, I know you can definitely go a different way with this depending on what you want to do. I've seen a lot of people using Korgs or potentially Yondus to kind of, you know, drain your opponent's deck. But these are the ones that I personally like. Now, 2-drops, we've got 4 of them. And Angela, of course, she's going to make a ton of sense. You can keep playing Kitty Pryde on top of her to continually buff her up. The other ones, again, are huge, right? Falcon is going to be bringing all those 1-drops back, allowing you to play them over and over again, getting another copy of a demon, getting, you know, another one of their cards hit with +1. Obviously, Kitty Pryde is already bouncing back, but still, that feels great. Then there's Mysterio and Hit Monkey, and those two kind of go hand in hand. We know how strong Hit Monkey can be. Huge benefit of Mysterio being hit by Boss, having those clones, those copies be 3 power as well. So definitely a really nice interaction there, and just adds to the power level of Mysterio Hit Monkey combo. Our 3-drops are Bishop and Beast. Obviously, Bishop is going to make a lot of sense because we're playing a bunch of small things. We're trying to play them over and over. Bishop can definitely get powered up quickly. And then Beast, of course, it's a bounce deck. Beast is kind of the king of bounce. It's where this deck really shines, is getting those down to 0 or 1 cost, and then playing them all on turn 6 to win you the game. Chavez is in this list for a little bit more consistent draw. This is, a very, very standard list. Now, there are a couple other lists that you could go with depending on what you want to do. Now, I've seen Chavez taken out. I've seen Spider taken out. And a lot of the times I've seen Korg and Darkhawk in here as well. Sometimes I'll see even, I think it's Iceman is taken out in favor of Black Widow. So this obviously is still bounce, but our big source of power comes in the form of Darkhawk, and we add Korg to keep our opponent's deck full, and Black Widow to do the same thing. They're not going to be drawing cards. Darkhawk is going to be nice and healthy. You can play Darkhawk on 6 next to a Kitty Pryde and a Demon and feel really, really good about that play. So you can kind of go with this Darkhawk bounce. There was another list that I was playing that I actually had a ton of fun with. Now, it wasn't the strongest list out there, but it was a list that I enjoyed playing. And it actually was running Ronin. So Ronin the Accuser, very similar to kind of that Darkhawk bounce, but in this case, we're using Baron, we're using Master Mold, and I had one other 1-drop in there. I think I had Spider-Ham as well. Just to stuff up our opponent's hand, we've got Master Mold, we've got Baron, we have those standard 1-drops. Now this is definitely a little bit 2-drop heavy. I think I might have even taken out Mysterio, but I still like his combo with Hit Monkey. But this is another way that you could play those bounce decks if you want to try something a little bit different. Ronin doesn't get enough love, and honestly, he can be super, super strong. He can put out a ton of power for a 5-drop, and then you could play a Kitty Pryde next to him and feel really good about that turn 6 play. So that's kind of 3 different bounce decks that you could give a shot. But let's move on to the next list, and it's going to be discard. Now, this was the standard list for the longest time. And I know it's recently changed a little bit, but this list it's everything you want out of a list to climb with. It's consistent, it's got power. Form of answers, it's maybe a little bit lacking there, but most of the time you're just going to be able to get too much down for your opponent to actually be able to do anything. So looking at this, our discard package consists of Morbius, Wolverine, Swarm, Colleen Wing, Lady Sif, Swordmaster, and then MODOK and Apocalypse. Of course, Dracula is in there, also part of kind of that discard package. So you got a ton of discard cards there. In fact, all of them except for three of them are going to be from kind of that discard archetype. And those other three are going to be Nebula, Storm, and Chavez. Chavez is great in this list in particular because if you get Dracula down, you are guaranteed to have a 6-drop for it to hit in the form of Chavez. And a lot of the times you're left with Chavez and Apocalypse, and then it's just a decision between, do I play Apocalypse or do I play Chavez? Do I need more power on Dracula or do I need more power in that other lane? So super consistent list, super strong, definitely one that you can quite easily climb with. So very, very standard list. Now this new list, I'll be honest, I haven't tried a whole lot. I've only had a handful of games with it, so I may not know it to the most of my ability, but I do think that it's a really nice list. It's something a little bit different from this archetype. So it gives you something else to kind of play. Something a little bit, I don't want to say more fun, but definitely something worth giving a shot if you want to change from that standard discard list. So as you can see, out goes a lot and in comes a couple different cards. The big inclusion here is going to be Helicarrier. So when you're discarding it, you're adding 3 random cards to your hand. And another big inclusion, I actually am a huge fan of Ghost Rider, and being able to discard, Helicarrier, Apocalypse, we're going to feel really good about doing that. We like that with this because we can bring it back, and we're not just getting rid of it kind of like how MODOK does. We have the opportunity to bring it back. Additionally, another nice inclusion here is Moon Knight, discarding a card from your opponent's hand, a little bit of disruption. So this deck gets rid of a few things, but brings back a couple others, and just other lines of play that open up that you typically don't see. Additionally, you're going to get some of those random cards in your hand, which is nice because then your opponent doesn't know what you're doing. Your plays don't become as predictable, as linear. So the element of surprise is actually kind of huge. And in Marvel Snap, if you can trick your opponent with what you're trying to do, you're going to win that game 9 times out of 10. So definitely a fun list here. Discard is pretty straightforward still, but that's not a bad thing. It's still a very, very good list. But let's get on to the next one here. And it's our last one. And it's probably one of the strongest, most consistent lists out there, and that's Sarah Control. As you can see, this is a very, very standard list, a list that has been around for a long time just because it is so strong. I think I even made a whole video just on this list because of how consistent and strong it is. It's going to persist throughout pretty much any meta. So if you're going to learn any of these decks, I'm going to continue to say it's this one. But let's talk about it, and let's talk about why. We've got power in the form of Kitty Pryde, Angela, Bishop, right? We've got answers in the form of Killmonger, Shang-Chi, Enchantress. Sarah is going to give us discounts, and because we are so 2-drop heavy, we can go off for absolutely huge turns on turn 6. Additionally, we still have the powerful combo of Hitmonkey and Mysterio. We can handle bad locations with Scarlet Witch. Sentinel will keep our hand nice and full, but sorry about that. But yeah, this list is just super consistent, super nice, and it's a list that's definitely worth learning and kind of learning to its fullest capacity here. But as we know, a lot of these lists can be tinkered with and changed, and Sarah is one card that you can certainly build around. And the other list that she typically shows up in is a list that involves, actually, I'm glad I'm on it, a lot of 3-drops. So a lot of the times we can keep 1 or 2 of these. We typically only keep Nova. We get rid of a lot of these 3-drops here, and we actually get rid of a lot of these 4-drops as well. Bishop goes. We're going to keep Mysterio and Hitmonkey, but the rest of those are going to go. And here's what we're going to add. Storm is going to be huge. Location control. Juggernaut is going to be great as well to help us back up that Storm location. We're adding a bunch of 3-drops, so Silver Surfer makes a ton of sense. Additionally, I like to use Brood as well. It's 3 3-drops, so you know that getting Brood down means you've probably won that lane. Another card that is really nice to include is Maximus, and this is a very, very nice list so far. But there's one other inclusion that I always like. Maybe it's a little bit different there, but I really enjoy playing with Goose because of how difficult Goose can make it for our opponent. So this is the other kind of Sarah. It's more of a 3-drop heavy, not so much a control list, but you definitely have some control elements in the form of Storm and Juggernaut specifically. We can still answer those annoying 1-drops while buffing up our cards. And if you get Sarah down, on 6, you're playing 3 2-drops, and that can be super, super strong, especially if you've already been able to get 1 or 2 of them out there already. Then playing another 3, buffing them all up, is going to win you the game most of the time. So this is another list. I know that a lot of the times this list typically goes even more 3-drop heavy, but I like it this way for a couple of reasons. My turn 4 play, I don't mind then going Mysterio into Hitmonkey if I have it. Additionally, we can go with a 3-drop and Nova on turn 4 as well. That leaves us with, turn 5, we can fit in, say, a Goose and a 3-drop if we don't have Sarah. But obviously, this deck is built around Sarah. I just like that we have a couple different options by keeping some of these 2-drops in here. So these have been, 5 of the strongest decks in the meta right now with different versions and variations of each. I hope y'all have enjoyed the video. I'm sorry if I've been a little bit long-winded here, but there's just a lot going on in these decks, and I wanted to share as much information as I had. If you've hung around till now, I really do appreciate your support and watching the video. Now would be a good time to subscribe and like if you haven't done so already. And just be on the lookout for the next one, because I'm going to continue to put out Marvel Snap content. But until then, have some fun.